Shadow Generations. Oh my god, it is finally here. At long last, we can see Sonic and Shadow kiss. Genuinely, this game blew my socks off. Like, for once, they took everything good from the previous game, built on it, and removed the frustrating parts of them altogether. Frontiers and Superstars were great and all. Well, one was certainly better than the other, but I'm more looking at Frontiers here. They took the controls and feel of the game, which was already good, built on it, and removed the terrible compulsory collectathon, which was the memory tokens. We have a brand new open zone which looks great and is even more fun to explore. It's not as widespread as what Frontiers offered, which I like. I don't think time and numbers alone is exactly how you should pad out a game. I think Shadow Generations does a great job with pacing, and also has a fantastic story compared to Sonic Generations, which is crazy given that the games both follow the same concept. I did take a quick stab at Sonic's half before streaming Shadow's part though. Bye Tails. If saving Tails was an optional side quest, I would never do it. But I suppose we can get right into Shadow's story. In this video, I really just feel like talking about why this game is so great as we run through it, so let's get started with the game. Actually beginning with Sonic's birthday at the same point in time the original Generations took place. This isn't fully what I expected given what stages appear later on in the game, but I'm all for this crossover. I love the little scene at the start with Shadow remembering where he was created and when he woke up and Maria being all excited to see him. It's super cute. Then after being in a Discord VC with Rouge, he goes straight into the first sight of danger, and we learn that Space Colony Arc stage takes place at present time, which I thought was fantastic to kick off the story. I won't waste a lot of time banging on about this stage since we've seen so much of it in the marketing. Come to think of it, we saw practically everything in the marketing, but oh well. The whole game leaked anyway. I love transitioning between different areas of the arc, and even cooler when we transitioned into Black Game's recreation of Radical Highway, which I guess in this point of the game we're not really expected to know that, but the music is kind of a giveaway to anyone who has played Sonic Adventure 2. I do think the level design in this segment could have been better, but one thing I do like about it is that it shows off that Sonic games are very unlikely to rely on automation in level design anymore, as when you actually play it, you can feel that you have to control Shadow properly and he won't forcefully follow the path on his own. A small display of the new collectible, which we will most likely see more of, and then we can finish the first stage. For actually going fast, 5 minutes is incredible for a first stage, and it's been a very long time since we've experienced anything close to this. And then we get huge fan service from the fact that Shadow found the fake emerald that Tails used. Wait Shadow, what are you doing with those emeralds? And then the time meter does its thing and just fucking absorbs everything and sends Shadow to white space. You can already see how much of a step up that Shadow's white space is in comparison to Sonic's. Instead of finding collectibles in stages, you find the tokens in the stages and use them on chests in the white space. Excuse me. With some collectibles just straight up being in white space. Being fully 3D is a nice addition too. My guess going into the arc Act 2 was that each Act 1 would be fully 3D and Act 2s would be 2D, and for the most part, I was correct. I was very impressed with how faithful the level design was compared to the stage's source materials. The rail slopes were really cool, and the weird anti-gravity pillars were just as fucked up as they were in SA2. I love accuracy. I did think it was a bit odd that we got to use Doom Spear before the game actually introduced it to us. Not really a complaint. A bit like in Unleashed when Eggman knows Sonic is alive but then ends up surprised when they meet in Missouri, like, it's just a consistency thing for me. And then we get a short tease of Doomwing, just for this stage. That's a really cool power. And I could kind of foresee that this was going to be the alternative to a super form in this game, and honestly I prefer it since it actually changes up the gameplay instead of just an infinite boost in invincibility. Shadow notices Maria and Gerald across the white space and actually shows emotion about it, which is crazy compared to Sonic's friends going all over space and time, and he just doesn't seem to care in comparison. And then we get Doom Spears. I do wonder if it was the use of multiple spears that was the power. I'm yet to test this. But all these cutscenes are so cool, and now that we have spears, we can explore more of the white space. It seemed very empty at first, but it grows exponentially as you beat more stages. It's really cool. I looked for some collectibles and headed to the next stage, Rail Canyon. And again, I cannot express enough how impressive it is when compared to the source material. The rails, the switches, the enemies, and this stage does a great job at teaching you how to properly use Doom Spears, since some enemies must be stunned before you can take them out without taking damage yourself. And this stage features another teaser at Radical Highway. I don't think these sections break the flow at all. I love how they are a taste of what's to come later on and provide a nice difficulty spike mid-stage. It's really refreshing, to be honest. However, I wasn't as impressed with Rail Canyon Act 2. Sure, it's still faithful level design for the most part, but I don't know, the game is a bit slower on 2D rails I feel. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. I like the end of the stage with the armoured cars and the train, and using Chaos Control to stop being destroyed by it. That's one aspect I've not even talked about yet, Chaos Control, and the ways it can be used later on are so amazing. So far, I'm feeling this being the new direction to the boost formula. There's a good bit of exploring to do in the white space. I think the platforming is really fun and it gives you more insight on how Shadow controls.
Something calls to me. Something calls to me. Something calls to me. Something calls to me. Something calls calls to me. Something calls.
Was that necessary? What I'm wondering is how we keep ending up with these cutscenes that are slightly stretched. Like, what the hell happened with this cutscene? He is so white. Okay, now that we found a boss gate, it's challenge act time. Unlike in Sonic Generations, there are less gates per stage this time around. However, instead of just beating one from each stage and move on, you have to beat all of them from each individual act before you get a key. Which is fine, since these challenges are leagues better than what most of the ones that Sonic offers. I won't waste too much time on these. Basically, the challenge acts will have you practice Shadow's abilities or give you a challenge to overcome, such as using Chaos Control a ton, dash rings, or one ring challenges. Most of the challenges are reused from Sonic, but the stages that utilize Shadow's abilities are a ton of fun, not to say the reused ones aren't. My favourite ones from the first two stages are going to have to be the Ring Challenge in Real Canyon Act 1, and the One Ring Challenge in Space Colony Arc Act 2. I just cannot stress enough how amazing the level design in this game is. There's only one act in particular where I think the level design kinda falls flat, but I'll talk about that when the time comes. Replaying these for the S ranks is incredibly fun, and there's 3 collection tokens for each gate, just like in the stages. We need 3 keys to access the first boss, but we're going to need all the keys eventually. The game doesn't tell you this, but if you are yet to play the game, I'm just letting you know this now. Saving the spare keys for later can help with variety, but getting them all now is very efficient. You can also still chase after the rewards from the bells in the challenge gates, but it's way harder in a 3D environment. I only collected 3 keys, which means we can access the first boss, the Bio Lizard. The beginning of the fight starts off being very faithful to how it's fought in SA2, and then after your first chance of attacking, the Bio Lizard grows fucking wings covered in some frog spawn shit which you need to attack, let the eggies fly, and use them to get up. This is definitely new, and I love how it works. Then the final phase has Bio Lizard jump up to the wall, and the game demonstrates how using Doom Spear and Chaos Control is great for bosses. You'll be using these a lot. And the devs took a chance, like they do in every boss, to show just how well they cooked with the animations in this game. It all just looks incredible. After clearing the first act of the game and the second begins, pretty much the entirety of the remaining white space is revealed to us. And then Black Doom decides to make an appearance. Again, showing us how much they cooked with the animations. They really just wanted to show off those, didn't they? I mean, about time. I love how Shadow just wants Doom to fuck off and Doom is like, "Shadow, we need to cook." We then unlock Doom Surf, which in my opinion is the coolest looking out of the Doom powers. It controls a little weird, but I do really like it, and in stages it looks and feels great to use. Which leads us to Kingdom Valley, which is probably one of my favourite stages here. I'm a huge 06 hater and don't really think the game has many redeeming qualities, but I have to admit that the adaptation of Kingdom Valley is fucking fantastic. They brought back the eagles carrying you between parts of the stage, did a great job with implementing Doom Surf into the stage, the bouncy ropes are great and even allow for extra height with a stomp, and even brought back the combat rooms from the original 06 too. Not something I'm entirely happy with, but we've already figured out how to skip it, so I'm not going to complain. Even the max speed section is back. Not in max speed, but it's still sick as hell. The level design in this stage is meaty, I love it so much. Act 2 remains pretty faithful to the original from what I can gather in my own knowledge. You will likely never see me play 06 again, ever, but what counts here is that I love the stage design. Like, do you see this? Hardly any automation. We can finally play the game ourselves. I thought Act 2 kind of overstayed its welcome a bit. The stage is longer than it needs to be, but I liked it nonetheless. I was also very surprised to see Big right after finishing Kingdom Valley. I thought it was funny, and it was a nice reference to the fact that Big and Shadow have never actually interacted with each other until this point. Even in Sonic Heroes standing inches apart from each other. He keeps ending up in the silliest places, what a guy. I had a go at one of the white space challenges, but as it turns out, I think I picked the hardest one here and was very put off by it. I did come back later on and try out some of the others, and I thought they were pretty fun. It reminded me of the action chains from Frontiers, which was probably one of my favourite additions to the game, and I'm glad to see them return in some form. I also discovered that the pages from Robotnik's journal are floating around in these containers, which is better than the physical copy of the journal you get. Trust me, it's tiny. Look at the fucking size of this thing. What the fuck do you want? And next up is Sunset Heights, which remains faithful to Forces and starts off as a fucking hallway, but then very quickly redeemed itself and became what Forces should have been. I was very impressed with the alternate paths available in this stage, as well as the Death Egg robots throwing shit around and like actually being threatening. I have to criticize that though, since that's very unfaithful to Forces where they do fucking nothing. But then we end up in the underground parts, which is where this level shines. The design is great and it's just like the rest of the stages so far. It has great... What the hell am I even saying? Has great alternative paths which require clever use of chaos control to make good use of. And then another tease at Radical Highway. This was where I realized that killing enemies doesn't grant you any boost at all and it goes straight to the chaos control meter. Not in these segments, since anywhere affected by Doom's powers block off chaos control. I thought this was dumb at first, but now that I've played the game more, it makes a lot of sense. There'd be no boost management otherwise, and it raises the skill ceiling in a very good way. Now I'm sorry to never shut up about Stellar Blade, but oh my god, this part of Radical Highway vision just reminded me of that Hypertube slide and how much trouble I had with that part. just like I did here. I missed the shadow emblem from Doom, so just in case it's a compulsory item, which I still can't verify if that's true, I replayed the stage. I didn't want to take any risks. Then Act 2, which I thought was a fun stage, but these stages overall are not nearly as entertaining as the Act 1s. This one is good and builds on the very few good parts of episode Shadow enforces, but it hasn't got much to talk about as the next one. Then we get a sick-ass cutscene where Shadow saves Maria from the Black Arms and reunites with his old family. He reassures them that they will both be okay, because like, he wants to change the past and keep them safe, not understanding that it's going to undo so much of how he's grown as a person. Not yet, at least. I was really impressed with the story at hand, already easily one of the best Sonic stories. And now after entering this castle and finding the next boss gate, our challenge gates open up. I got a bit lost at Sunset Heights trying to find the challenge gates, but then when you actually know how to get up, it's fine. I did Sunset Heights Act 1 challenges, which was one ring and an obstacle challenge. Both were pretty good. I also liked the music selection which came with the deluxe version. It includes some older iconic themes, as well as a collection from Forces, Team Sonic Racing and Frontiers, most of which are the best choices. And I had a good time with all the Kingdom Valley ones too. I left the Sunset Heights Act 2 ones behind for now since Kingdom Valley was my favourite so far. I had to repeat this pillar challenge a bunch of times because of this one collectible I kept on missing and dying as a result. Please just feel free to come back to these later, they aren't going anywhere, don't be like me. The Egg Gunners mission was fun because I like the Doom Blast power even if it is a little gimmicky, but you can make some good use of it in 3D stages. Then we got a whole stage based around Surf, which is hella fun. I do think these challenges are a little forgiving, but when you beat the game you unlock harder challenges, although Kingdom Valley's ring challenge I thought was quite tough on my first few shots at it, since the level design threw me off a little bit. But when I did beat it, I had just enough rings to win. Now we can head back up to the boss gate and face off against Metal Overlord, which before the trailers I had no clue would be in the game, but since he copies powers, especially Shadow's, it makes a lot of sense and the battle is a ton of fun. The fight takes way more skill than it looks. Sure, you can throw the debris as much as you want, but what really counts is reaching those alternate paths to actually damage Metal Overlord straight up. This is also, I think, the only stage of the game that uses both 3D and 2D in it, since you have a second phase testing your ability with Doomsurf in 2D, which is a lot easier than the first phase. Can't believe Team Sonic needed super farms and the real superpower of teamwork to beat Metal Overlord, and Shadow is just like, brick.
Hey man, you need to sit your motherfucking ass down.
What I'm made of also is remixed, by the way. It doesn't really sound like it, but it is. Then heading into Act 3 of the game, we get more insight into why Black Doom is even here in the first place and how the powers are affecting Shadow. And as Shadow grows stronger, so will Doom. But Shadow refuses to believe that and wants to take the power for himself to defeat Doom. Pretty based if you ask me. And the characters are all showing so much more emotion in these cutscenes, it's really fucking cool if I'm honest. And then we get rewarded with easily the worst Doom power, Splatoon, which looks really cool but doesn't function as well as it should, but it showed us the way to the very obvious next stage, Chaos Island. The morph ability doesn't exactly demonstrate the difference between swinging and grappling, which makes it so hard to use. It's very situational. Against what I've been hearing a lot of people say, I absolutely love Chaos Island in this game. Sure, the Splatoon fucko is a bit finicky, but the level design and the environment are incredible and so accurate to Frontiers. Even the soldiers stand still and do fuck all, it's wild. I did avoid Doom Morph where I could originally, but on repeat runs, if you can make just good enough use of it, the paths are so much quicker. I love how the stage is a linear take on an open zone, and it adapts its iconic features very well as adding to it with Shadow's new powers. However, like usual, I wasn't as impressed with Act 2, given that Chaos Island's actual problem in Frontiers was how much it relies on 2D. And this stage just felt like it was rubbing that in, especially with how much it uses Doom Morph with it. That stupid lift also broke the pacing of the stage, but I will give credit to the morph sections since they're pretty fast. Also, the backgrounds are so accurate to the original island, but overrun with lava since it's after the volcano has erupted. And then we've reached possibly the most disappointing part of the game, the crossover with Sonic's story. I love the reference to Sonic Heroes, but they made it look like we would get a proper Sonic rival battle. The cutscene looks incredible and was looking like an interesting fight. But then Shadow just didn't want to use his powers, and then Sonic took him out, took the fake emerald, and fucked off. God, this made me so upset. Also, given these camera shots, there was no need to be covering Rouge's back. This doesn't ruin the game or anything, doesn't mean it's an unfaithful remaster, it just doesn't seem like there was much point given how they showed off her features anyway. I guess if you really wanted to find a reason, you could just Google Rouge backshots to find out more. Then in the cave towards our next boss fight, we can see just how terrible Splatoon really is in this game. It's awful to control. This could just be a skill issue, but as a first time player at this point, it was just awful. The setting of this cave is a dead giveaway for who the boss is, but this gate needed 4 keys, which includes the challenge gates I left out prior to this point. So, let's go and tie up all the loose ends. I started by taking on the Sunset Heights challenges. I really liked the Dash Rings one since it forced you to act quickly to decide which path you would take to get collectibles, even if it was a short stage overall. The other challenge was cool too, a good way to keep you on your toes, but it hardly blew me away, just a recycled gimmick one from Sonic's half if you ask me. Then I tried the Chaos Island ones, which for Act 2 were really fucking weird. The first one was Chaos Control to destroy as many spinners as possible. It's not a long one, so it's basically just a quick test of ability. The other one with a bunch of floating gondolas is just Sky Sanctuary at home. I wasn't as impressed with this one, but it has some cool skips that speedrunners are discovering. Still hate this genre of challenge though. Act 1 challenges were definitely better. Short stages testing your skills with major abilities that Shadow has. The first one being Chaos Control, which is great, but the Doom Morph one just pissed me off, since the collectibles rely on grappling, and the game only tells you how to swing. But, collectibles aside, you can beat this challenge super quick. Wouldn't be a complete Sonic game without some crappy part to it, would it? But at least this time it's minimal. But then afterwards, I realised I didn't have enough keys, so we're going back to the art. I like Doom Blast, so no complaints about that challenge. I thought it was very clever with the collectibles, and honestly, same goes for the Chaos Control mission too. It's very time restricted, so S rank is pretty much guaranteed for this given how much you'll use Chaos Control. And then we have the last key. And our next boss, to no one's surprise, is Mephiles.
Barbecue bacon burger.
I'm not gonna lie guys, I never got through much of Shadow Story in 06, so I didn't know how Mephiles would sound, but he fucking speaks like Gabriel from Ultra Kill, and honestly he sounds really cool. And this boss is great too, properly utilising Doom Morph in a way that doesn't make me want to commit some fucking war crimes, which starts off simple and evolves into you taking on a much stronger mutated version of Mephiles, and then ending off with Chaos Control, into Sonic Team just flexing how high budget their animation is now. Such a great fight. Then we get even more insight into why Doom is doing what he does, and it's also great to see Doom like actually move around and express things, unlike in Shadow 05 where he's basically just a statue. But then we get this super cute scene of Maria convincing Shadow to not use his anger as a weapon, and honestly this made me a little emotional. He does end up running off a bit scared of what he was just told, but you can tell it had an impact and he does listen to her. The stories for Sonic games are getting so much better. Out with the silly colour style, and in with the serious Unleash style. They better keep this up. Then, once we unlock our final power, the Doom Wing, we get to see Shadow accepting his power, and Gerald apologising for the path he put him on. The way he treats Maria here is just so adorable, and the callback to her wish is so nice to see. But he knows what he has to do, and so do they. So we get to fly off and approach our final stage. I did have to restart Steam here since I was getting no achievements on Steam and couldn't figure out why, but restarting Steam enabled the achievements, but didn't give me any I'd earned so far. Oops. If you look at the times I earned the achievements now, it's also out of place. I beat all the acts before I beat any of the acts apparently. So the final act ends up being Radical Highway, which I think is an amazing choice since it's teased throughout the stages, and then we get a grand return to Shadow's first ever stage, and it's beautiful. The difficulty spike is intense yet welcome. To get your S ranks, you'll be replaying these stages a lot. But I mean, these are some of the best stages in Sonic history, so I don't see any reason to complain there. These stages are very, very open given how you're encouraged to use Doomwing often, and it's also a welcome addition to the game by this point. And then even in Act 2, this is still a 3D stage, which surprised me, but I don't mind a break from the norm. This is definitely the toughest stage yet. It gives us mini bosses mid-stage, and they offer a Doom Blast after, which is really fun to take advantage of. This stage overall just looks stellar, and is a great stage to have right before the final boss. Again, a massive difficulty spike. Until you see the speedruns, like what the fuck? And now, the finale. The return of Devil Doom, which we all expected really, but this adaptation is leagues better than Shadow 05. I mean, anything is leagues better than that game anyway. The cinematic before it is fantastic, the transformation is sick, and it kicks off into a Doom Surf segment, which is clearly a callback to how we fought Metal Overlord. This was easily going to be a test of everything we've learned so far, and I am all for it. This boss is so cool, and I just love everything about it, aside from when it said, hey, let's test how well you can use Doom Splatoon, kill me now. In all honesty, this part isn't as hard as it wants to be, but it's still a bit annoying. It's built well though. You need to reach Doom 3 times, and each time you do, the starting point gets pushed further back with more of the platforms being destroyed as you go. And then when you think you've won, Shadow gets his wings back out, and Doom becomes Neo Devil Doom with a sick-ass remix of All Hail Shadow. This section of the battle does a great job testing how well you can control Doom Wings, as well as weaving it in with what you've previously learned, like using Doom Surf to knock objects back. Doom having the same abilities as Shadow is really cool too, most of which you'll notice if he manages to damage you in this phase, like the Chaos Blip teleportation thing, whatever it's called, I kind of forgot. All the animations are sick. This boss is so cinematic and easily rivals what Frontiers Offer does. It needed more of this, And now we have it. More wide-ass cutscenes for the ending, but I could hardly notice that. This ending is so cool, and Sonic Team have finally given us a super cinematic ending on par with the Final Horizon. Shadow Generations has set a brand new standard for Sonic games, and I am so excited to see what they cook up going forward. And to end off, we get the most emotional scene in a Sonic game ever. Shadow having to say goodbye to Maria again. Or rather a proper goodbye, since he didn't get one before. And this is really moving. It's so sad to see Maria and Gerald go again, and even more sad when Shadow cries on his way to help Sonic. But this is what has to be done. It's Shadow's canon event, and he wouldn't be the character he is today without this experience. The game may be a bit on the short side, but has been the most powerful and amazing story we've ever had in my opinion. And that's it. To round off all my thoughts, I think almost everything in this game is a solid 10. I think all it's held back by is the wonky controls of the Doom Morph and a lack of a Sonic vs Shadow from Shadow's perspective. It was just a long cutscene that in my opinion ended in disappointment, but to make up for it, it uses stages we haven't seen in a long time, revamping what made them great and outright removing what let them down in the past, as well as giving us a Shadow that controls amazingly and sets a new example for what a boost title can and should be. I hope Sega capitalise on what made this game great and learns the right lessons from their successes, unlike what they did in the past. Looking at you, Sonic Colors. This video took an incredibly long time to make, so any and all support is much appreciated. Leave a like if you enjoyed and drop a comment on your thoughts on the game. I read all the comments and I'm always entertained by what you lot have to say. This game is going to get a lot of content from me in the coming weeks, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of it. Massive thank you to everyone who has supported me so far, and for those to come. I also stream on Twitch, which is where we get the footage for these videos. And I'm also very active on Blue Sky now. If you give me a follow over there and tag me with the line "Shadow has peaked," I'll give you a follow back. All the links that you'll ever need from me will be in the description below. Big thanks to hweilla and Makon for the thumbnail, and that's about it from me. Apart from the fact that I'm going to have to re-record that entire Frontiers video I had lined up now that I can actually move. I promise that video will actually come out. Okay, that's actually all from me now. I've been Snack, and I'll see you in the next one.